Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another spoiler review episode here on the Outlaw Nation for Ted Lasso. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, and a massive Liverpool fan, as you can tell there. That's right. We're hanging out. But I'm joined by my friend who is kind of maybe walking into the world of football a little bit more, world of soccer a little bit more. Shannon McClung, how are you?
I'm all right, Johnny. I'm walking into the world as much as much as I need to for the show.
Well, you're letting the Orlando Pride down. That's a shame. I think they'd appreciate your support back home, but I respect that. But Shannon McClung, who is 1/3 of the Geek Buddies here hanging out. We've been doing these spoiler reviews every week. Shannon, last week we had a really nice Christmas episode, but I'll tell you this. I saw some backlash for the Christmas episode. I don't know if you saw that, but Emily Nussbaum, who I respect, she's a Pulitzer Prize winning critic. She really didn't like She called the episode icing. And she said, I know that other people like that. I forget, is it Shane Ryan, I think, over on Paste Magazine? He went off on the episode, went off on the whole season. He is not liking the season. It's a little too touchy-feely for him, and there's not enough depth, in his opinion, in the season overall and in the characters and the storylines overall. So we walk into episode 5. What do you think, Shane? Are you sensing any of that yourself, or are you just sitting back and enjoying the ride so far with Ted Lasso?
I'm 100% enjoying the ride.
Okay.
To call it icing, I think there's a risk of playing the Christmas episode in August. It's right. A little okay. I do think maybe it would have resonated with more folks if it had been released around December, around late November. I still loved it. I thought it was delightful. My girlfriend is not as taken with the second season as I am. She's like, it's good, but it's not. It's not checking off all the boxes like it did the first season. And part of that, I think, is the first season was just so unexpected. I mean, you didn't, we had no indication that it was going to be such a great series. And now going into season 2, there are expectations. For me personally, I'm enjoying it. I mean, and I think as we get into the second half, we are seeing some of those bigger stories play out. Something that you and I had kind of speculated on last week that I feel like a lot of the audience was kind of like, that's not going to happen. I'm like, it doesn't look like it, but we might be wrong. We'll see.
Who knows? Certainly this episode is called Rainbow, and it's very focused on Rom Communism. That's romantic comedy showing you a way out of tough times in your life, that it's always going to work out one way or another in your life. We've got a number of storylines that we're running through this one. First, this idea that Nate needs to be more assertive. That's connected to him trying to get a Windows table for his parents on their 35th wedding anniversary. He gets help from Keeley and Rebecca in order to do that. Ted Lasso himself, a little trouble with Isaac, his captain, trying to get him to stop being a barking, angry dog and start to get him to fall back in love with the game. And then Rebecca's got a dating situation roaming around here. We don't know. There's a lot of allusions to the possibility, or there's one allusion to the possibility it could be Ted that she is texting on that app. And the other storyline running through this thing is Roy Kent. Roy Kent, is he going to be a pundit? Is he really happy being a pundit? Or does he need to come back to the sidelines and become a coach? So we explore all that in this episode for sure. And this is a spoiler episode, so if you haven't seen if you haven't seen the episode, go and pause it right here. Go and watch the episode and come on back and hang out with us. Shannon, let's start with Nate's journey here through the whole episode. This is a kind of an interesting decision to do with Nate as a character at this point. He was having these issues with Will, which we haven't revisited, by the way. So I could ding the season overall right now for that. They had presented this idea that him and Will were going to have this back and forth, and that was going to carry on through the season, and maybe Nate would learn something about being respectful towards people who are at a lower position like he was. But now we're back to the Nate from the first season before Ted Lasso gave him a whistle. He's a little less assertive. He's a little nerdy. Yeah, he's talking to this hostess, Jade, who's trying to get him who's not letting him have a window table for his parents. And then Keeley and Rebecca help him with some wordplay. And then he has this moment that he uses. Rebecca suggested doing something like make yourself as big as possible. And for Nate's, it's to spit at himself in a mirror. And then that gives him the balls he needs to get that table. Can't get the number from the girl, but he certainly gets the table. What did you think overall of Nate's journey in this episode, my man?
Well, I don't think that the journey with Will is over. I think maybe we're taking. I think this was just maybe a little respite in that dynamic, because right now, I mean, the Nate Will storyline, it is very much it's a running joke at this point.
Yes,
like we see this guy who is starting to feel himself a little bit more and kind of taking grief out on Will that used to be taken out on him. But it is because they haven't devoted a ton of time to it. It is a running joke, and thus far, I think it's working. But I don't think we're done. I think we're going to revisit it, and by the end of the first season, like, he did kind of find that confidence in regards to the club. So I think outside of that comfort zone, there is still that uncertainty. There is still that nervous guy. And I think, he's gotten comfortable, kind of barking at these big dudes, but a pretty woman can still be intimidating to a little guy like this. The fact that this Jade, the hostess, does not want to give him this table. Again, like, I did not live in the UK. You did. I'm looking at this little restaurant like, really? Yeah. Why can't they have that table in this little Greek, a taste of Athens? So watching Keeley and Rebecca kind of school him about this is how you do it. How Keeley called him Shelby. He was like, no, my name's Shelly. The great thing about Nick Mohammed's performance is sometimes I have to turn on the subtitles because he's so soft. Like, it's really. It's difficult to hear him sometimes, but then you see when he does sort of assert himself, he goes too far. Like, he's not figured out that middle of the road approach. And then when he finally does go to the restaurant with his parents, like, we don't know a ton about them yet, but we just see his dad. Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of, it's sort of like a Costanza like trio, but less broad, because you get this very kind of disapproving, maybe disappointed father, and this mother who I wouldn't say coddles him, but is definitely more of the supportive parents. And when he goes into that bathroom and spits, I know. I mean, that was such a shocking move. And then as he kind of found that confidence to then go out and not demand the table, but to basically use Jade's logic against her, saying, you said you don't take reservations. That table is empty. This is what's going to happen. And I was like, oh, fantastic. And then once he sees that it worked and he immediately asked for her number, it's like, no, I'm picky. I was like, that was a great comic topper to that storyline.
Oh, and the dad too, right? The dad's like, I'm not a dog. Don't whistle at me, right?
I'm not a dog.
That was great. But also the dad, you see that, the dad was behind Nick or behind Nate and saying, hey, just that just like you're not being assertive, or you're not speaking up. You're just going to get bullied by the hostess. So it's that kind of thing where you experience with fathers who are overbearing. They don't understand their overbearingness is exactly what creates the cycle with their kids, where their kids come out all subservient and nervous and unsettled by a person with loud personality or a loud or aggressive personality, because you've trained them to be that way. They are a sensitive kid. You didn't understand that. And so the mom kind of overdoes it to overcorrect. And so you've got Nate. What comes out is Nate. But yeah, I enjoyed it's great to see Keeley and Rebecca working together and having their chemistry as these kind of women who want to empower him to kind of step forward. I love that Rebecca was already like looking at, table, where do you want to go? And like all these high-end restaurants that probably would have been way better for his parents to celebrate a 35th anniversary at. It might have looked better for Nate, but Nate has a kind of a smaller approach to the world, and to him, this is the one restaurant his father complains about the least. So it should be the best place for them to go. So,
don't you think it's odd that for their 35th anniversary dinner, the three of them went out?
I don't think that's odd at all. With that family? No, not because it seems like he is their bridge between their relationship. And so he is caught in between. So he naturally would go to this 35th wedding anniversary because they're a trio. They're not a duo. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like he's an only child, and he is essential to keeping that relationship going. If I feel if Nate was to disappear, I think she'd leave him in a heartbeat. That's what I feel like. That's what I said. I don't know. I'm not.
thinking about his dad's sort of unhappy faces he was making. I wonder if part of that is like, of course, Nate has to come with us on this the 35th anniversary of our marriage. I wonder if there's something to that. There might not be. You might be right that Nate literally he's the glue holding the marriage together.
I don't know. We shall see. We shall see. All right, let's get into and I'm sure because his dad was referenced in the last episode, the Christmas episode, how like he didn't know what to get him because he hates everything. And so, certainly this will come to fruition. Maybe a interaction with Will down the road kind of sparks something in him, and this more assertive Nate that is building throughout the season will confront his father once and for all. And have the back and forth with his dad a little bit. Dads are a very prevalent part of the show, bro. I mean, Jamie Tartt last episode. By the way, Jamie Tartt comes to the club and poof, the last 2 episodes, not much with him. That rapping scene last episode, he's rapping the gift. And this, he's just picking up an espresso and walking past Keeley. That's pretty much, and then has an interaction, I guess, in the when they're watching the tape. Jamie does when he's contributing to the romantic comedy conversation. But, it's interesting how they brought him back, but there's really nothing happening with Jamie Tartt. I think they're dropping the ball a little bit on there. There needs to be some drama being brought up here. How is his journey going? How is his situation happening? Because he's such a huge part of the show. It almost seems like since he's come back to the club, they've kind of sidelined him a little bit. I don't know if anyone else is feeling that way as well.
I thought about that, but part of me also wonders because we don't know, like we know how many matches they've kind of gone forward. At least 9 or 10.
Yeah, it feels like 10. Yeah, at least. Yeah,
based off of last week. Right. But I do wonder if Jamie, at this point, at least in the timeline, Jamie is still on his best behavior. Yeah, that he is trying not to stand out. Like he's. But is he
scoring? Is he playing? Is he reserve? Is he starting? That's what I want to see. How is his game coming along for Richmond? How is he working with the team? But I'm a sports guy. I'm a football guy. So that's where my mind goes, right? Other people probably are looking more storyline wise. I'm like, well, does he work with the team? Is he scoring the goals? Is he helping the team? So that's me in a nutshell. And speaking of the team, let's get into the other storyline here. Shannon, the captain, Isaac McAdoo here. He is first Roy Kent is on Match of the Day, gets asked about Isaac. We see Isaac after they've lost this game here. And Jan Maas, of all people, is responsible for the loss, in his mind at least. At least he's very honest about it. We see him out in the area with all the players there watching the tape with the coaches, with Ted Lasso and the coaches, Coach Beard and Nate there. And Isaac is like, pointing finger. He's kind of yelling, not standing over people, but he's like, you got to put better, mate. You got to do this, mate. You shit, mate. All this kind of stuff. And Ted's forced to kind of stand up and be like, okay, I believe in Rom Communism. And he gives his whole spiel about it, Shannon, talking about all these different romantic comedies. And like in every romantic comedy, you're in the dark forest and you come out, and by the end, you're where you're supposed to be. So this kind of connects to Isaac's journey because Isaac is in a bit of a dark forest himself, as well as the club. So Ted eventually down the road, although Nate offers to help, which Ted laughs at, which I think is a funny moment, he thinks he needs a bigger dog to motivate the other dog, which is Isaac, to kind of come back to a level-headed enjoyment of the game and help the team enjoy the game as well. And he ends up convincing Roy to help him. Roy in a kebab shop of all places, and Roy comes down from Match of the Day. And we'll circle back to Roy overall as well, but this is connected to Isaac. Gets Isaac to play in one of those 5-on-5 little mini fields they have. They're all over Britain there, and he ends up rediscovering his love for the game, which ends up being something he transfers to the team overall. What did you think about this? Because it seemed odd, right, that Isaac is all of a sudden, I didn't even know Isaac was the captain of the team, to be honest with you. And so seeing him kind of have this storyline going through, because we haven't had much with him. He's not a character we've seen like his parents or his girlfriend or his boyfriend or whatever. And we haven't seen much of the background with Isaac. So all of a sudden he's front and center in the storyline. Did that throw you off a little bit, or did you enjoy what they were doing with him?
No, I mean, it did strike me that we haven't really visited with Isaac very much, because last season he was one of, I believe he was one of Jamie's minions.
Yes.
And then he became the captain by the end of the season. It was a little out of the blue, but it's I don't think they would have made Sam the captain. Like he wasn't that he wasn't at that level yet. I do think at some point Sam is going to become the captain. But the most we visited with Isaac is last week when he was in the crazy Santa outfit for Secret Santa at the beginning. Yeah. But talking about like the role of a captain, the role of leadership, and all he's doing is just kind of criticizing. I mean, he's not putting forth any solutions, which as in a leadership role, like it's okay to critique, but then you also have to provide guidance, and he wasn't doing the second part. And so to see Roy take him out on that field where he immediately looks down on who he's playing with, because I'm a professional. And from moment one, he gets tackled. That is like, all right, these are street rules. Like we're not in the stadium right now. But you saw him sort of remember that fun that he used to have, that ultimately, and I feel like a lot of professional athletes probably don't think about this as much, but ultimately it is a game that they are playing. And the way to excel in that game is to remember what made you fall in love with it from the beginning, and it ultimately is fun. I mean, like I'm personally am in a very fortunate position in that my employment is based around things that I like to do. If I suddenly started to hate everything that went along with acting or went along with writing, I don't know what I would do. I'd be like, oh, this is terrible. And obviously think like the it can be hard sometimes. Like I'm sure being a professional athlete is incredibly difficult, but the moment that he remembers like, oh, this is a game, let's go out and have fun. And you see that enthusiasm sort of trickle down from the top down to the other players. You watch how they warm up the next time. And it was like, oh, see, this is how you become successful.
Yeah. Well, and also Ted says the lesson from all these romantic comedies is to have zero expectations and just let it go. It'll work out how it's supposed to, which is a very difficult thing for Western audiences to accept. Western approaches to the world are not about, that's more of a Buddhist tenet there, to just kind of have zero expectations and just let it go and let things happen as they're supposed to happen and trust that they'll work out the way they work out. We're taught from birth it's about winning. It's about succeeding. It's about making the most money. It's about establishing yourself, or as Keeley might say, establishing a brand, promoting a brand. But what Ted is talking about is more of an Eastern philosophy approach, more of a meditative, a Buddhist philosophy to the world. And so he's trying to get the team and Isaac to kind of embrace that as well. Hey, he's like, because they're apparently, according to Match of the Day at the beginning of the show, this episode rather, they're in the battle for possibly going into the relegation zone. And for those of you who don't know relegation zone, that means you drop the next level down. So Ted Lasso as a coach, watching the team drop multiple levels in 2 seasons, they fire anybody who does that. So I don't know if this works, if Ted can't get them back up. If Ted can't, because it feels to me like we're not getting up to the Premier League in this season, unless there's a incredibly insane turnaround and other teams above them start to really have huge swoons. There's no way the Richmond's going to get up there. So we'll see if this ends up providing the impetus for the back half of the season here to have a little more of the football soccer approach to things come out. Did you like the everyone contributing their romantic comedies, the 3 Kates? And then Danny Ross chiming in with Jennifer Lopez right at the end there, which I thought was hilarious.
So like, was it Nate who talked about Kate Blanchett?
Yeah, he's like, spelling's all wrong. It's all wrong. It's not the same thing. That was really funny. Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was super funny. I mean, Danny Rojas, it doesn't matter if he has a storyline in an episode or one line of dialogue. Yeah. Like he's always just such a joy to watch. Yeah. And just Ted's reactions, like a little late, but I'm glad you got there, Danny.
I know. Cristo Fernandez doing incredible work for sure. But one last thing before we move to the Roy Kent, also Dr. Sharon Fieldstone is watching from behind them, taking notes, asks Ted later on in the episode if she wants his help. Ted says no. So clearly there's still an issue there between them, kind of germinating. And I told Shannon I'm watching Catastrophe right now. Sarah Niles is in Catastrophe. If you guys aren't watching Amazon Prime, you should. So it's nice to see her in this, but she's another character that seems to be just getting these random scenes, but we're not getting more extensive interactions with her. And I would like to see more of that. What do you think about her contributions last episode and this episode, because she's just watching all this stuff happen. But it seemed like she'd be a little more involved in the overall psychological makeup of the team. But we don't seem to be touching base with that as much as I thought we would be.
Yeah, I think right now her role, she's there if the players want to go to her.
Right.
I think even though,
or Ted, because Ted turns it down when
yes.
she's offers it too. Yeah, good. Yep.
Yes, she's. It's not her job to go and seek out, and I think she might be wary of doing that in sort of like that professional, in a corporation, which a football club essentially is.
Yes.
Like she is staying in her lane right now. That to actively go out and seek out players, that might be going out of her lane a little bit. I mean, I think ultimately the goal that we're working towards is for Ted to sit down with her.
Yes, right. It seems like yes.
And I think eventually, I think we're going to get there. I mean, what is this, episode 5? So we're almost halfway to the end of the season.
Right.
My hope is that, we had that great Christmas episode.
Yes.
We have this episode now. I think this is kind of starting us on the journey for what the last arc of the season is going to be. But we'll find out.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on. Roy Kent real quick. This storyline as well. Roy Kent at the beginning, match of the day, having some fun banter with the guys and, talking about, about what's going on with Isaac McAdoo. But then later on, Roy goes to meet a mustachioed person that might anger him at a kebab shop. And what do you know? It's Ted Lasso. And Keeley had kind of warned him that Ted was going to show up. Ted's there to talk to Roy to come back to Richmond to become a coach. And Roy immediately turns it down, doesn't want to do it. Up comes the kebab shop owner, who's really funny. And he drops his words of wisdom that he left, a week before finals of medical school. And he was a damn good doctor, but he knew what he wanted to do was to make a good kebab and run a kebab shop. And he's happy doing that. So he's kind of saying to Roy, essentially, yeah, you're good at this, but where you belong is in coaching. And Roy says, think about it and I'll pray on it. Ted does this little sign of the cross, then walks out, which I think is really funny. And then Roy has a bit of, I wouldn't say a meltdown, but he has a pretty honest moment on Match of the Day, breaking down what an analyst's job actually is and kind of really rips the curtain back, which I think is kind of gutsy for them to put this in the show. And for those Match of the Day pundits and analysts who are on there those are real guys who show up on that show, to have their jobs essentially kind of exposed by Roy and his quick tirade, I would say. Then he walks out and he runs essentially as much as his knee can take him to the stadium there and walks up onto the sideline. And what's his face is happy to see him. Ted's happy to see him. Coach Beard is happy to see him. Nate seems bothered by this. Here's Nate, a little assertive, but you get this look from Nate to Roy and back to Ted that he looks like his job might be threatened here by having Roy on the sideline. And Nate actually wore a damn suit, so he thought he was really stepping out here. But having Roy come back, how is that going to change the dynamic of the team? We shall see. But what do you think about this whole thing with Roy now? This seemed to be inevitable, but it happened a little quicker than I thought. What do you think about him moving into coaching here with AFC Richmond?
I mean, that's where I assumed he would end up at the end of last season, that this guy is a great character. You don't want to get rid of him. So what is a natural way to sort of keep him in the storyline loop? And it would be to have the easy suggestion is to have a coach, or the easy solution is to make him a coach. But the fact that they didn't immediately go that way, that he was enjoying, coaching his niece's team. Right. And then he became a pundit. It's sort of, you don't want to make it too easy. If he were to just become a coach at the beginning of the season, it's just not as gratifying.
Right. The conflict's not there. Yeah. Good point.
Exactly. And then the moment that he has his sort of meltdown, that's the classic rom-com moment. Yeah. Where you realize what you feel about, in his case, his partner is the game. Yeah. He's saying all these things about well, we don't do this. It's suddenly you realize all the things you didn't appreciate about your partner partner.
Right.
And as he leaves, I mean, and again, his partner being football.
Yeah. He's getting so emotional, which is great. Yeah.
Well, and you have the great slow-mo shot. You have him trying to flag down a cab. Yeah. I mean, it's
snowing. Yeah, it's all there. Yeah.
I mean, this is all the ending of a rom-com. And then as he comes back, his partner, football, welcomes him with open arms. Yep. The crowd is chanting his name and doing he's there, he's here, he's there, he's everywhere, Roy Kent. The funny thing with Nate is this is the second time that this season, because first it was Higgins sharing his office.
Right.
Now it's I mean, I don't know how many coaches a professional football club typically has. 4 seems like a lot, but I know when you have like an NFL team that you have your head coach, you have your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator. Like I know the NFL, like that's a large coaching staff.
There's multiple coaches on a coaching staff. You're right. With football, usually it's the head coach, obviously. Then you've got a coach with tactics. Then you've got a coach that's working with the players. And then you have a trainer, which kind of does the physio staff that works with the players to get them physically ready to play, monitors any injuries or whatever. So, yeah, you don't have 26 coaches or 20 coaches in the world of football. It's very tight-knit. And you'll see them sit on the sidelines. But it has gone up to 4 to 5 coaches besides the main coach. I've seen that in the dugout before, depending on what their specific jobs are. And sometimes it can be an offensive analyst and a defensive analyst for the game, and they're offering multiple tips to the head coach as things are going along. You see that all the time. So yeah, I think 4 is about the limit for a team in the championship. That's for a level of football. That's for damn sure. So we'll see. And apparently Rebecca can pay him, so it's not a problem for him to come back and coach. And I love that Roy was like, "Why won't you let me be happy?" And he's like, "Well, I'm trying to show you how to be happy." Essentially, is what Ted's saying.
Everything Roy trying to get into the stadium.
Oh my God.
First, the attendants won't let him in. He's like, "I'm Roy Kent." They're like, "You do look like him." Then he goes to the box office. Then the kid sees him and just that growl that he does as this child.
He smiles like, "Yeah, that's Roy Kent."
Everything about it was just so funny. It was interesting. Like they gave the box office attendant that great moment. He's like, "Well, welcome back," but he's behind this reflective glass, and it's like you can hear that like the actor's doing a great job. I was like, I wish we could see you more, because I feel like this would be more of like that rom-com moment. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. My guess right now is by the end of this season, Nate does not stay with Richmond. I think he's leaving.
I think he's going to take another job as a coach on another team. And that could be interesting going into season 3. If he's a coach of another championship level team in the same, and so they're playing each other. I think that'd be fascinating to see that. I'm all for that. Also, we should touch on, when he curses out the girls, he's like, the security guard, the female security, is like, "Oh yeah, it is you." I did like when Harry met Sally, or a moment there with the 2 older. That was nice.
The couple.
That was a couple. That was funny. I thought they were going to kiss at the end, but clearly there's 2 actors hired to play those parts. And then you see, and we should add on to this as a kind of a subplot that's working in Rebecca's texting here and her exploration of finding her own voice. She asks Higgins about how he met his wife, and he talks about what he used to look like and how this all happened, and that's why that Rolling Stones song "Rainbow" is their ringtone, and that plays when Roy is running to the stadium, which what underlines the romantic comedy aspect of it. But she's texting somebody, and in the stands, and as she's texting somebody in the owner's box, rather, we see Ted checking his phone as he's walking. And I've already seen a couple of my fellow critics on Twitter this morning going, "There's no way she's texting Ted. Ted would have some cute name or weird name. There's no way it's Ted." But it feels like You've Got Mail. It feels like a callback to that, but I don't think it's Ted. Do you think it's Ted?
I mean, that's what the writers want us to think.
You're right, exactly.
I mean, and this is not the first time that they have alluded to that Ted and Rebecca might have feelings for each other outside of friendship. Like they started with when it was Rebecca and Sassy. And Rebecca basically asked, "Hey, how was Ted in bed?" I'm kind of whittling it down to its base for that question.
Absolutely.
But then you see Rebecca comes to the rescue on Christmas for Ted. And now, it is not a mistake that Rebecca sends that message, and the next shot is Ted checking his phone.
Yeah.
So that is what they want us to think. That's what it feels like to me. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a gullible audience member.
I hope they're not. I hope they're not doing that. Let them be. This is not moonlighting, for God's sakes.
A lot of people don't want Ted and Rebecca to get together.
No. It messes with the dynamics of things. Don't do that. It'll mess with the team as well, for sure. And especially, well, and because, I mean, you could add conflict to this, Shannon, if they do get together and Ted keeps losing and they get into a relegation zone battle. That could be really interesting on so many levels. I mean, the other side of this is that Rebecca fires Ted, and into season 3, it's Nate who takes over the team, and it's Ted on his own journey in London trying to figure out what he's going to do next. That could be interesting as well, and where he catches on. And maybe he's Nate's assistant coach. I don't think they'd ever do that, but you just never know. You never know if Jason Sudeikis is up for a challenge in that way. So, any final thoughts on this episode before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I get how some folks may not be as in love with this season as the previous season, but I am not one of them. I enjoy this. I'm enjoying this series just as much as I did last year.
Yeah, I'd say I'm liking the season, but I don't think it's as demanding of you as a viewer as it was last season. And it is, and it's just like when that one band shows up with that album right off the bat, and you're like, oh my God, this is incredible. And then you're waiting for that sophomore album, and the sophomore album has a few hits, and it feels like the first album, but it isn't quite as good overall as the first album. And right now, I don't sense the second season overall is as good as the first season. And we're only halfway through. So maybe the last few episodes will absolutely kind of change that point of view overall. But it doesn't mean I'm not enjoying the season. I am enjoying the season. I'm sensing, though, that they're presenting storylines and then walking away from them rather than revisiting them in more depth as every episode goes along. But as we said, or as I just said, we'll see. We've got a few more episodes to go. All right. Thank you so much for watching this spoiler review episode. We appreciate it madly. Please remember to like this video and share it on your social media. Also remember to subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that bell button as well. And Shannon, where can they follow you? Thanks again for joining me today, brother. Where can they follow you and everything you're doing, man?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy, and you can see me twice a week with this handsome gentleman to my right on our regular Geek Buddy show that drops on Wednesdays or Thursdays, depending on the news, and also our spoiler reviews for What If on Disney Plus with the great Emma Fyffe.
Yes, absolutely. And Michael Vogel as well. And you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And is that it? I think that's it. All right. Well, take care of yourselves. Be well. We'll talk to you next time with another spoiler review episode here on the Outlaw Nation for Ted Lasso. Football is life.